The complete works of Swami Vivekananda, Volume 1, Section 3, Patanjali Yoga Aphorism, Chapter 1, Shlok 35. Those form of concentration that brings extraordinary sense perception causes perseverance of the mind. This naturally comes with dharana, that is concentration. The yogi says, if the mind becomes concentrated on the tip of the nose, one begins to smell. After a few days, wonderful perfumes. If it becomes concentrated at the root of the tongue, one begins to hear sounds. If on the tip of tongue one begins to taste wonderful flavors, if on the middle of the tongue one feels as if one were coming in contact with something, if one concentrate on the mind, one's mind on the palate, one begins to see peculiar things. If a man whose mind is disturbed wants to take up some of the practices of yoga and doubts the truth of them, he will have his doubt set at rest when after a little practice, these things come to him and he will persevere. persevere. Shlok 36. Or by the meditation on effulgent light, which is beyond all sorrows. This is another sort of concentration. Think of the lotus of the heart with the petals downward and running through it, Sushumana. Take in a breath, and while throwing the breath out, imagine that the lotus is up, turned with the petal upward, and inside that lotus is the efficient light. Meditate on that. Shlok number 37. Or by meditation on the heart that has given up all attachment to the senses. Take some holy person, some great person whom you reverse, some saint whom you know to be perfectly non-attached, and think of his heart. That heart has become non-attached, and meditate on that heart. It will calm the mind, and if you cannot do that, that is the next way. Shlok 38. Or by meditating on knowledge that comes on in sleep. Sometimes a man dreams that he has seen angels coming to him and talking to him, and that he is in the ecstatic condition, that he has heard music floating through the air. He is in a blissful condition in that dream, and when he walks, it makes a deep impression on him. Think of the dream as real and meditate upon it. If you cannot do that, meditate on any holy thing that pleases you. Shlok 39. Or by meditation on anything that appeals to one as good. This does not mean any wicked subject, but anything good that you like. Any place that you like best, any scenery that you like best, any idea that you like best, anything that will concentrate the mind. Shlok 40. The yogi's mind, thus meditating, becomes unobstructed from the atomic to the infinite. The mind, by this practice, easily contemplates the most minutes as well as the biggest thing. Thus, the mind waves become fainter. Shlok 41. The yogi whose vrittis have thus become powerless, that is, control, obtains in the receiver the instrument of receiving and the received, the self, the mind, or and the external object. Concentratedness and sameness like the crystal before different colored object. What results from this constant meditation? We must remember how in the previous aphorism Patanjali went into the various state of meditation. How the first would be the gross and the second the fine, and from them the advance was to still finer objects. The result of this meditation is that we can meditate as easy on the fine as on the gross objects. Here the yogi says these three things: the receiver, the received, and the receiving instrument, corresponding to the soul, external object, and the mind. There are three objects of meditation given us. First, the gross thing has a body or a material object. Second, fine thing has a mind, the chitta. And the third thing, the Purush qualified, not the Purush itself, but the egoism. By practicing, the yogi gets established in all this meditation. Whenever he meditates, he can keep out all other thoughts. He becomes identified with that on which he meditates. When he meditates, he is like a piece of crystal. Before flowers, the crystal becomes almost identified with the flowers. If the flowers is red, the crystal becomes red, or if the flower is blue, the crystal becomes blue. Shlok 42. Sound, meaning, resulting knowledge been mixed up is called samadhi with question. Sound here means vibration, meaning the nerve current which conducts it, and the knowledge reaction. All the various meditations we have had so far, Patanjali calls Savitarka, meditation with question. Later on, he gives up us upper or higher and higher dhyanas. In these that are called with question, we knew the duality of the subject and the object, which results from the mixture of word, meaning, and knowledge. There is first the external vibration, the word. This carried in word by the sense current is the meaning. After that, there comes a reactionary wave in the chitta, which is knowledge. But the mixture of these three makes up what we call knowledge. In all the meditation up to this, we get the mixture as objects of meditation. The next samadhi is higher. Shlok 43. The samadhi called without question comes when the memory is purified or devoid of qualities, expressing only the meaning of the meditated object. It is by the practice of meditation of these three that we come to the state where these three do not mix. We can get rid of them. We will first try to understand what these three are. Here is the chitta. You will always remember the simile of the mind stuff to the lake, and the vibration, the word, the sound like a pulsation coming over it. You have that calm lake in you, and I pronounce a word cow. As soon as it enters your through your ear, there is a wave produced in your chitta along with it. So that wave represents the idea of cow, the form or the meaning as we call it. The apparent cow that you know is really the wave in the mind stuff that comes has a reaction to the internal and external sound vibrations. With the sound, the waves die away. It can never exist without a word. You may ask how it is. How it is. When we only think of cow and do not hear a sound, you make that sound yourself. You are saying cow faintly in your mind, and with that comes the wave. There cannot be any wave without this impulse of sound, and when it is not from outside, it is from inside. When the sound dies, the waves dies. What remains? The result of the reaction, and that is knowledge. These three are so closely combined to in our mind that we cannot separate them. When the sound comes, the senses vibrate and the waves rises in reaction. They follow so closely upon one another that there is no discerning one from the others. When this meditation has been practiced for a long time, memory, the receptacle of all impressions, becomes purified, and we are able clearly to distinguish between one another. This is called as nirvitarka, concentration without questioning. Shlok 44. By this process, the concentration with the discrimination and without discrimination, whose object are finer, are also explained. A process similar to the preceding is applied again. Only the objects to be taken up in the former meditation are gross. In this, they are fine. Shlok 45. The finer objects end with the pradnya. With the pradnya. The gross object are only the elements and everything manufactured out of them. The fine objects begin with the tanmatras or the fine practices. The organs, the mind, egoism, the mind stuff, the cause of all manifestation, the equilibrium state of sattva, raj, and tamas materials called pradnya, that is chief, prakriti, that is nature, or avyakta, that is unmanifested, are all included within the category of fine objects, the purush, the soul, accepted, along with, along been accepted. Then next is the Eva Sabij Samadhi, 46 shlok. These concentration are with bij. These do not destroy the seeds of the past actions and thus cannot give liberation. But what they bring to the yogi is the state of following aphorism. 47. The concentration without discrimination. Being pure, the chitta becomes firmly fixed. 48. The knowledge is that in that is called filled with truth. The next aphorism will explain this. 49. The knowledge that is gained from the testimony and inference is about common object. That from the samadhi just mentioned is of a higher order, being able to penetrate where inferior inference and testimony cannot go. The idea is that we have to get our knowledge of ordinary objects by direct perception and by inference therefrom and from testimony of the people who are competent by people who are competent. The yogis always mean the rishis or the seers of the thoughts recording in the scriptures, the Vedas. According to them, the only proof of scripture is that they were the testimony of competent persons. And they say the scriptures cannot take us to realization. We can read all the Vedas and yet will not realize anything. But when we practice these teachings, then we attain to that state which realizes what the scriptures say, which penetrates where neither reasons nor perception nor inference can go, and where the testimony of other cannot unveil or veil. This is what is meant by aphorism. Realization is real religion. All the rest is only preparation. Hearing lectures or reading books or reasoning in the merely preparing the or ground is not religion. Intellectual ascent and intellectual descent are not religion. The central idea of the yogis is that just as we come in direct contact with the object of the senses, so religion even can be directly perceived in a far more intense sense. The truth of religion has God and soul cannot be perceived by the external senses. I cannot see God with my eyes, nor can I touch him with my hands. And we also know that neither can we reason beyond the senses. Reason leaves us at a point quite indecisive. We may reason all our lives as the world has been doing for thousands of years, and the result is that we find we are incompetent to prove or disprove the facts of religion. What we perceive directly we take as the basis, and upon the basis we reason. So it is obvious that reasoning has to run within these bounds of perception. It can never go beyond. The whole scope of realization, therefore, is beyond sense perception. The yogis say that man can go beyond this direct sense perception and beyond this reason also. Man has in him the faculty, the power, the transcending his intellect, even a powerful which is in every being, every creature. By the practice of yoga, that power is aroused, and then men transcend the ordinary limits of reason and directly perceives things which are beyond all reason. Shlok 15. The resulting impression from this samadhi obstructs all other impressions. We have seen in the foregoing aphorism that the only way of attaining to that super consciousness is by concentration, and we have also seen that What hinder the mind from concentration are the past samskaras or impressions. All of you have observed that when you are trying to concentrate your mind, your thoughts wander. When you are trying to think of God, that is a very time these samskaras appear. At the other times, they do not so active. But when you want them out or not, when you want them not, they are sure to be there, trying their best to crowd in your mind. Why should that be so? Why should they be much more potent at the same time of concentration? It is because you are repressing them and they react with all the forces. At the other times, they do not react. How counting these old past impressions must be all logged somewhere in the chitta, ready, waiting like tiger to jump up. These have to be suppressed that the one idea which we want may arise to the exclusion of the other. Instead, they are all struggling to come up at the same time. These are the various powers of the samskaras in heightening concentration of the mind. So, this samadhi, which has just begin or been given, is the best to practice. An account of its power of suppressing the samskaras. The samskar which will be raised by this sort of concentration will be so powerful that it will hinder the action of others and hold them in check. The samskaras which will rise by this sort of concentration will be so powerful that it will hinder the actions of others and hold them in check. Shlok 51. By the restraint of even these impressions which obstruct all other impressions, all being restrained, some comes the seedless samadhi or nirvid samadhi. You remember that our goal is to perceive the soul itself. We cannot perceive the soul because it has not mingled up with the nature, with the mind, with the body. The ignorant man thinks his body is the soul. Think The learned man think his mind is the soul, but both of them are mistaken. What makes the soul get mingled up with all these different waves in the chitta rise and cover the soul? We only see a little reflection of the soul through these waves. So, if the wave is one of anger, we will see the soul has angry. I am angry, one says. If it is one of love, we see ourselves reflected in that wave and say we are loving. If that wave is one of weakness, the soul is reflected in it and we think that we are weak. These various ideas come from this impression, this samskar covering the soul. The real nature of the soul is not perceived as long as there is a single wave in the lake of the chitta. This real nature will never be perceived until all the waves have subsided. So, first, Patanjali teaches us the meaning of these waves. Secondly, the best way to repress them. And thirdly, how to make one wave so strong as to suppress all the other waves. Fire eating fire as it were. When only one remains, it will be easy to suppress that also. And when that is gone, this samadhi or concentration is called seedless or nirbhi samadhi. It leaves nothing, and the soul is manifested just as it is in its own glory. Then alone we know that the soul is not in a compound. It is the only eternal, simple in the universe. And as such, it cannot be born, it cannot die, it is immortal, indestructible, and the ever living essence of intellect. Chapter 2, Concentration, its practices. Shlok 1. Mortify, Mortification, study, and surrendering fruits of work to God is called Kriya Yoga. Those samadhis with which we ended our last chapter are very difficult to attain. So we must take them up slowly. The first step, the preliminary step is Kriya Yoga. Literally, this means work, working towards yoga. The organs are the horses, the mind is the rein, and the intellect is the character, charioteer. The soul is the rider, and the body is the chariot. The master of the household, the king, the self of man, is sitting in this chariot. If the horses are very strong and do not obey the rein, if the charioteer, the intellect does not know how to control the horses, then the chariot will come to grief. But if the organs, the horses, are well controlled, and if the rein, the mind, is well held in the hands of charioteer, the intellect, the chariot reaches the goal. What is meant, therefore, by this mortification, holding the rein firmly while guiding the body and the organs, not letting them do anything they like, but keeping them together, both under proper control. Study. What is meant by study in this case? No study of novels or books or storybooks, but study of those works which teach the liberation of the soul. Then again, this study does not mean controversial studies at all. The yogi is supposed to have finished his period of controversies. He has had enough of that and has become satisfied. The only study is of intensify or to intensify his conviction, Vada and Siddhanta. These are two sort of scripture knowledge, Vada the argumentation and Siddhanta the deceive. When a man is entirely ignorant, he takes up the first of this, the argumentative fight and reasoning pro and con. And when he has finished that, he takes up the Siddhanta, the decisive, arriving at the conclusion. The simple arriving at this conclusion will not do. It must be intensified. Books are infinite in number and time is short. Therefore, the secret of knowledge is to take what is essential. Take that and try to live up to it. There is an old Indian legend that if you place a cup of milk and water before Rajahans, that is swan, he will take all the milk and leave the water. In that way, we should take what is value in knowledge and leave the dross. Intellectual gymnastics are necessary at first. We must not go blindly into anything. The yogi has passed the argumentative state and has come to the conclusion, which is like the rock, immovable. The only thing he now seeks to do is intensify that conclusion. Do not argue. He says, if one forces argument upon you, be silent. Do not answer any argument, but go away calmly, because arguments only disturb the mind. The only thing necessary is to train the intellect. What is the use of disturbing if it for nothing? The intellect is but a weak instrument and can give us only knowledge limited by the senses. The yogi wants to go beyond the senses. Therefore, intellect is of no use to him. He is certain of that and therefore is silent and does not argue. Every argument throws his mind out of balance, creates a disturbance in the chitta, and the disturbance is a drawback. Argumentation and searching of the reasons are only by the way. There are much higher things beyond them. The whole of life is not for schoolboy fights and debating societies. Surrendering the fruits of work to God is to take ourselves neither credit nor blame, but to give up both to the Lord and be at peace. Shlok 2. It is for the practice of samadhi and minimizing the pain bearing obstructions. Most of us make our mind like spoiled children, allowing them to do whatever they want. Therefore, it is necessary that Kriya Yoga should be constantly practiced in order to gain control of the mind and bring it into subjection. The obstruction of yoga arises from lack of control and cause us pain. They can only be removed by the denying the mind and holding it in check through the means of Kriya Yoga. Shlok 3. The pain bearing obstruction are ignorance, egoism, attachment, aversion, and clinging of life. These are five pains, the fivefold tie that binds us down, of which ignorance is the cause and other four are its effects. It is only cause of all our miseries. What else can make us miserable? The nature of the soul is eternal bliss. What can make it sorrowful except ignorance, hallucination, delusion? All pain of the soul is simply delusion. Shlok 4. Ignorance is the productive field of all this that follow, whether they are dormant, attenuated, overpowered, or expanded. Ignorance is the cause of egoism, attachment, aversion, and clinging of life. This impression exists in the different states. They are sometimes dormant, or you often hear the expressions innocent has a baby at in the baby may be the state of demon or of the god, which will come out by degrees. In the yogi, these impressions, the samskaras left by the past actions, are attenuated, that is, exist in a very fine state, and he can control them and not allow them to become manifested. Overpowered means that sometimes one set of impression is held down for a while by those that are stronger, but they come out when that repressing cause is removed. The last state is the expanded, when the samskaras having helped surroundings attend to a great activity either as good or evil. Shlok 5. Ignorance is taking the non-eternal, the impure, the painful, and the non-self for the eternal, the pure, the happy, and the Atma or self, respectively. All the different sort of impressions have one source, ignorance. We have first to learn what ignorance is. All of us think I am the body and not the self, the pure, the effulgent, the ever blissful, and that is ignorance. We think of a man and see man as a body. This is the great delusion. Shlok 6. Egoism is the identification of the seer with the instrument of seeing. The seer is really the self, the pure one, the ever holy, the infinite, the immoral. This is the self of man. And what are the instruments? The chitta or mind stuff, and the buddhi or determinative faculty, the manas or the mind, the indriyas or the senses. These are the instruments for him to see the external world, and the identification of the self with the instrument is what is called as ignorance of egoism. We see I am the mind, I am the thought, I am angry, I am happy. How can we be angry and how can we hate? We should identify ourselves with the self that cannot change. If it is unchangeable, how can it be one moment happy and one moment unhappy? It is formless, infinite, omnipresent. What can change it? It is beyond all laws. What can affect it? Nothing in the universe can produce an effect on it. Yet, through ignorance, we identify ourselves with the mind stuff and think we feel pleasure or pain. Shlok 7. Attachment is that which dwell on pleasure. We find pleasure in certain things, and the mind will, like a current, flow towards them, and this follows the pleasure center as it were, is what called as attachment. We are never attached where we do not find pleasure. We find pleasure in very queer things, some things sometimes, but the principle remains. Wherever we find pleasure, there we are attached. Shlok 8. Aversion is that which dwells on pain, that which gives us pain. We immediately seek to get away from it.